Good Tuesday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Hope you're having a great day. Thanks for joining us. Plenty to talk about. A lot of Browns talk. A little bit later in the show, we will be joined by Terry Pluto, columnist for the Plain Dealer at cleveland.com. Talk some Browns, some Deshaun Watson, some Browns quarterback, as well as some Guardians. We begin by talking plenty of Deshaun Watson. The hearing underway with Sue L. Robinson, the league and the Players Association, to get a sense of any discipline that will be handed out to Deshaun Watson. Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk NBC Sports talked about what to expect from Deshaun Watson's defense.
It'll unfold this week. Jeffrey Kessler, who will be representing the NFLPA and Deshaun Watson in this matter, he will aggressively argue in favor of finding out what was decided, what was discussed, what was debated, what was done to Snyder, Kraft, and Jones. And if Judge Robinson lets him get the information he'll need to make that argument, the NFLPA will, not the NFLPA, excuse me, the NFL will be pissed. So that to me is going to be the truest indication of whether or not Judge Robinson wants to keep this job, or whether or not she's willing to stick her finger in the eye of the NFL and let the consequences fall where they may. Then, after she issues her decision, whatever it may be, as long as any discipline is imposed on Deshaun Watson, that's when the commissioner's on the scene. Either side can appeal, and he can impose whatever discipline he wants.
And again, this is a new hearing, if you will, for the National Football League. Roger Goodell is no longer judge, jury, executioner. There's this disciplinary officer, Sue L. Robinson, a retired judge, but an appeal would go to Roger Goodell. Any type of suspension, be it longer, as long as there is a suspension, and there is likely to be a suspension, any appeal goes to Roger Goodell. Chris Canty, filling in for Mike Greenberg on Greeny, talked about just what the whole appeal process will be like.
There's going to be a heightened degree of scrutiny that comes along with whatever decision, whatever outcome we get from this hearing. And that's why I think the NFL and Deshaun Watson's camp have to be careful in terms of what happens and what the next steps are after this. So whatever decision that Judge Robinson makes, if either side is unhappy, they have to be careful about making a decision to try to appeal the process, because we know it goes straight to Roger Goodell. And then, of course, if Roger Goodell determines something different than what Sue Robinson handed down in the way of discipline, then he's going to have a damn good reason to deviate from what a former federal judge decides, somebody that has been put in this position by both sides in the latest collective bargaining agreement. So that's the part where it presents a complication for the league if they wanted to be more heavy-handed than the discipline that Judge Robinson would dole out, if any discipline at all.
It's a valid point by Chris Canty, but the NFL has shown in the past they don't really care what it looks like. The other thing to keep in mind, a lot of reports have the NFL wanting to get this done and hope that there is a ruling of some type before the end of the week, is what most reports are saying. Mike Florio, not so sure that's going to happen. Here's Florio on how long this process of the hearing could take place.
This will play out, look, over the next month. Who knows? It depends upon how much evidence is going to be permitted by Judge Robinson under the defense that the punishment has to be proportional to other owners. So it could take a week. It could take a month, it could take longer. And then the commissioner has to handle the appeal. They'd like to get this done before the start of training camp. And there was a report not long ago where the league bemoaned the fact that the NFLPA may bog this down. Hey, the NFLPA's got the right. The NFLPA has the obligation to defend Deshaun Watson. Don't rush them. My dad used to call it the Rush Act. Don't give them the Rush Act. Let them make their decision. Let them take their time. Let them make their defense. The NFL is the one that's dragged its feet for 15 months. Now it's all of a sudden got to be done, got to get it done, got to go. No. The NFLPA should have every right to articulate and present a very clear, full-throated defense on behalf of Deshaun Watson.
With that, let's welcome in Mack Robinson, 92.3 The Fan. You can catch him tonight from 7 to noon. Mack, appreciate you hopping on. I know you got an air shift coming up. So you hear all that, and the hearing has begun, and it could be a while.
Yeah, and Dave, that's the one thing that you look at Deshaun Watson in this entire scenario. Again, both sides, they want to have some kind of a resolution. Watson, obviously, you saw last week, you had the settlements regarding the majority of the accusers, with those cases as well. But now you're looking at this case where, again, this is now in the hands of Sue Robinson. And, we had Josina Anderson on the station earlier today, and she called Sue Robinson, the X factor and the ultimate wild card in this scenario, because we've seen what Roger Goodell has done in the past. We've seen what the league has done in the past. We don't know what to expect from Sue Robinson. We don't know what to expect and what her thoughts are on this entire case. And so depending on how this all plays out, you could see something that kind of lends more in favor of Watson in the sense of, something maybe like 8 to 10 games, obviously getting some kind of a suspension down for him as well. But again, not necessarily the full year-long suspension that, we've heard constantly from the NFL. They're going to push for the year-long suspension. They're going to push for the year-long suspension. I think the NFL, in an effort to try to, get Watson and his camp to agree to something a little bit closer to what they want, I think that the NFL is bracing for the fact that Sue Robinson's going to meet them in the middle. Probably, like I said, something around 10 games. I think the floor is around 6, but I think that kind of meeting them in the middle, I think would be something that is very feasible in my opinion. Again, I'm no lawyer, I would say that, but at the same time, in following along how all of this has really played out, I do think that when it comes to this type of an action, this is the first time that we've seen, Sue Robinson put down and give this kind of a judgment. And so at that point, if you're the NFL, you join, like Chris Canty had said, you jointly accepted and appointed her into this type of a role. If you're the NFL and this is the first time you're doing this, do you really want to have it look like we're going to go against it no matter what? And so that's kind of the give and take, I guess, of this decision that you're going to get from Sue Robinson in the coming days or weeks.
You mentioned Josina Anderson, so she was on social media tweeting about this a little bit earlier. Here, head of disciplinary hearings, she was told to expect it to focus on 5 women, which we knew in the Deshaun Watson discipline case. 2 of them had their claims dismissed by separate grand juries. That's new information today. Understanding as evidence will be presented by Watson's side, demonstrating purported mistruths in the allegations in both of those cases. Also told that in order to counter the indefinite suspension of at least a year that the NFL is seeking, Watson's counsel will tactically reason for 0 games missed, and he'll point to the Robert Kraft and Daniel Snyder cases. There's a belief the open-ended suspension was leaked to still effort a settlement before the decision of hearing officer Sue L. Robinson, per a league source. And when you look at that, Mac, it all makes sense because, again, if the NFLPA or if Sue Robinson issues a lesser suspension and Roger Goodell says, "No, we're doing this," it's going to really bad optics for the league and a collectively bargained agreement, in the last round of collective bargaining.
Yeah, and that's the one thing is that, Sue Robinson was essentially supposed to take away the judge, jury, and executioner style that Roger Goodell has done in the past. If you go ahead and the first time that you have any kind of a ruling, and obviously it being a massive one like the Deshaun Watson case here, if you go ahead and essentially just trump her and trump that entire, collectively bargained agreement between those two, I think that's when you're going to get some serious issues from the NFLPA. And so, that's where I think that this entire case really is fascinating from the sense that, I think that both parties are essentially going to look at it and say, all right, we jointly agreed on this. I don't necessarily know if you're going to see the ramifications going down the line in the sense that, Deshaun Watson in his camp, if they take I think they're going to take whatever suspension is going to be thrown at them. But at the same time, I think the NFL is going to have to kind of sit on their hands a little bit if Sue Robinson goes for a lesser suspension. Again, at that point, that's where the NFL goes ahead and says, you know what? Hey, we tried. We went ahead. We tried for the indefinite suspension. We tried for the year-long suspension. But ultimately, Sue Robinson, who we agreed with, is going to make that decision.
Yeah, and again, that's one of the reasons I think they came out with the indefinite suspension. That's why they leaked that. Hey, we wanted a tougher one, but we collectively bargained this process, and we're going to go with whatever Sue L. Robinson says. All right, Mack Robinson, 92.3 The Fan, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out on the side of the break. Baker Mayfield had his youth camp out in Norman, Oklahoma. Asked about a possible reunion with the Browns. We'll hear from Baker Mayfield. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Mack Robinson from 92.3 The Fan. You can catch him tonight from 7 until midnight on 92.3 The Fan. All right, Baker Mayfield out in Norman, Oklahoma with his youth football camp, has been in Cleveland the last few years, this year in Norman, and Baker was asked about his future and any possible reunion with the Browns.
Is this process right now for you is it a little unfair that you still don't kind of know where you're going or what's going to be happening?
I think I got frustrated with it not happening before, like mini camp and all those things, but that's the stuff that's out of my control, and so, let those things happen and fall into place. And so right now I'm just controlling what I can and enjoying this.
A lot of people that know you know, kind of what you're about and your personality, and they're curious, could Baker Mayfield ever play again for the Browns if that
I think it's been pretty obvious the mutual decision on both sides is to move on. I'm thankful for my 4 years in Cleveland. There's a lot of ups and downs and a ton of learning experiences that I'll forever keep with me. Teammates and friends and relationships that I'll have for a lifetime. And just flew in last night from East Lansing, Michigan for Drew Stanton, who's my mentor. He was a quarterback there in Cleveland when I got drafted. And just relationships like that, you're just so thankful for. So, the support staff in Cleveland, the people of Cleveland, it's a great sports town. So I'm thankful for it. And there's no resentment towards the city of Cleveland by any means.
But I think a lot of people think if they didn't have a quarterback for the next year, would there be any chance of reconciliation there?
No, I think for that to happen, there would have to be some reaching out. But we're ready to move on, I think, on both sides.
And Mack Robinson, that is a very Baker Mayfield answer to that last question.
Dave, it really just comes off like when you ask if you're going to get back with your ex-girlfriend. Just do you get back with, are you going to get back with them? I think that I might consider it, but they have to apologize first. There needs to be some talking back and forth first. Again, I look at this entire situation. It was so Baker Mayfield with it. The only thing that was missing was a hip-hop lyric at the end of it like he was over the last couple of years. So, Dave, I think that when it comes to Baker Mayfield and this type of a scenario and this type of a situation, I just don't see Baker Mayfield suiting up for the Cleveland Browns ever again. I think that it's down to, he's played his last down in Cleveland. I think that, like he said at the end, both sides seem like they're ready to move on. And, truth be told, I think that, a lot of fans are kind of looking at this and saying we want a resolution one way or another. So I think that both sides are ready to kind of move past this. And, that way Baker doesn't have to answer any more Browns questions. The Browns don't have to answer any more Baker questions. And, at that point, just everybody moves on and goes on their own path at that point.
Yeah, and along the lines of the Baker Mayfield question, interesting back and forth here from ESPN's First Take, Freddie Coleman and Mike Tannenbaum, former general manager, with where he thinks the best place for Baker Mayfield may be.
I know from Baker Mayfield, Courtney, and Mike and Christine, I'm saying, wait a minute, let me get this straight. You need me now because the guy that you want to pay $230+ million in contract money is having all this situation, and he could be suspended a year by the NFL, and now you need me because at $18.8 million you can't move on from my contract. Let me think. Hell no, I'm not even returning to the organization. I never gave up on you. That would be my answer on Baker Mayfield. With all that happened last year, I never gave up on you. I went out there and played injured. I played hurt, even when guys didn't want to be with me. And then this is how you do me at the end of the year. And yeah, I get it. In terms of quarterback, Deshaun Watson, in terms of talent, better quarterback than Baker Mayfield. But that's who you decide to align yourself with. After I aligned myself with you and gave it up for you guys, they could call all day long. And there's no way from Baker Mayfield, Mike, and Courtney that I'm returning to the Cleveland Browns. I don't care what they need or who they needed.
But, Freddie, I'm looking at it totally differently. If I'm Baker Mayfield, for me, being selfish, the best place for me in 2022 to make the most money for the next 10 years is in Cleveland. So I'm not going back to help you. I'm going back to help me because $18 million should really be pocket change and the rounding error to what should be a $35 to $40 million contract as a free agent in 2023.
And, Mac, both of those are spot on accurate, and I don't think there's any way Baker Mayfield comes back and plays for the Browns under any circumstances.
Yeah, and, I tend to agree. And that's why, I understand what Freddie was trying to say in that scenario. I kind of disagree in the sense that, again, just from them even speaking to Watson, that was the second that you saw the whole Notes app statement come out from Baker Mayfield at that point. And also, too, at the end of the season, I think that there were some issues, after Baker Mayfield decided to, just sit out. He didn't even have the surgery immediately after the Steelers game. He just sat out the last week of the season. So, I wouldn't say it's perfectly clean cut back and forth. But, again, between what Freddie was trying to say, and then you also had, Tannenbaum, who, again, I agree with the fact that, yes, he can make the most money here. But the question that I have comes down to the fact that, I don't necessarily know how some of the locker room will react to Baker Mayfield if he is back for this season. And that's why, again, I kind of just think that it's best for both parties to go separate ways at this point. I understand Baker might be able to make the most money here in Cleveland for himself down the road. But again, I just think that for him, I think that moving on and really separating for both sides, I think is the best course of action for both. And I just don't see him taking another snap for quarterback for the Cleveland Browns.
Okay, so let's look. There's going to be a suspension of some length, Deshaun Watson. So it looks like the starting quarterback for the Browns will be Jacoby Brissett unless something changes via trade. Kind of an interesting perspective here. Pat McAfee, longtime Colts, a close follower of the Colts, had this to say about Jacoby Brissett.
Jacoby Brissett, I'm a fan of.
Me too. Yeah.
I was stumping for Jacoby to be MVP whenever he was the Colts quarterback because he was doing very well the first 10 weeks. Then Cam Hayward put his massive head into Quentin Nelson and the other offensive lineman, got him off, hurt his knee. He was not the same quarterback after that. Just wasn't. It was vastly different than what it was beforehand. So I think Jacoby can be very, very good in the NFL. I still believe that. I think he also is an incredible backup quarterback. Great for the quarterback's mentals, great for the vibe. He was one of the leaders of this team when he was here behind Andrew Luck. I think he's great to have. He might be their guy for the whole year.
And again, that's a former player's perspective who knows him well. So it's just an interesting perspective on somebody who knows Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah, and especially, even though McAfee and Brissett were never teammates, that doesn't mean that McAfee didn't have the pulse of the locker room, that he didn't have teammates that were still there. So, getting a chance to hear that about Brissett in the locker room really is helpful. And especially, for him, he's still going to have a great offensive line in front of him here in Cleveland. So, again, dealing with some of those knee injuries and everything like that, I don't necessarily know if that's going to be as much of a factor for him here in Cleveland. But I think he raises a great argument because, again, I think that, looking at Jacoby Brissett, I think that he can be a solid quarterback for you as long as you have the right weapons around him. And, again, with a running game like he has here in Cleveland with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, I think it makes a lot of sense. That offensive line, I think, can create enough time for those young wide receivers to get open at that point, along with Amari Cooper. So, I do think that Brissett has an opportunity to really succeed here in Cleveland. But also, I think that he can really take the lead and take that next step, given the fact that they have the right pieces surrounding him. And again, he has that opportunity to really kind of fill in the gaps until Watson comes back from that suspension.
Mack Robinson from 92.3 The Fan and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out, other side of the break, take a look at some defense. We're talking Browns defense on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE with Mack Robinson, 92.3 The Fan. You can catch Mack tonight on 92.3 The Fan from 7 until midnight. This is from Pro Football Focus. Each and every AFC's best contract. And for the Browns, they have John Johnson, 3 years, $33.75 million, 2 years, $20.5 million in cash remaining on it. Other options were Wyatt Teller and Jadeveon Clowney. And Mac, it's kind of interesting. Johnson was a free agent signing, so points to Andrew Berry. Clowney was a free agent signing, and Teller was a guy he extended.
Yeah, and that's the one thing, too, to keep in mind is that when it comes to managing the cap and looking at free agent signings, Andrew Berry does pretty damn well, when it comes to bringing in new talent. Obviously, everybody has their misses. Everybody talks about Austin Hooper, but again, everybody has those misses on their track record. If you're shooting 50%, or at least hitting 50% in the NFL, you're doing a pretty damn good job. So at that point, somebody like John Johnson makes a lot of sense. And I understand that he didn't necessarily have the all-pro performance that he was used to in LA this past year in Cleveland. But the problem is that, again, he had the new defensive coordinator with Joe Woods, was trying to get acclimated to that defense as well. So I think that by the end of the season, you saw what you were expecting from John Johnson. So I'm excited to see what he's able to do this year under the same defense and playing alongside, guys like Grant Delpit, who's going to be fully healthy this year, as well as guys like Greg Newsome, Greedy Williams, and of course, the $100 million man, Denzel Ward.
Yeah, and you know what? I think Joe Woods figured out long about week 5 or 6 how to best use John Johnson. He was really good after that. All right, this is also from Pro Football Focus. Kind of interesting. Linebacker unit rankings. So the 49ers are 1, the Colts are number 2, the Saints are number 3. The Browns check in at number 12. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah puts together an outstanding rookie, transitioning from more of an out-of-the-box linebacker to an in-the-box linebacker. Mac, when I look at this, I think, I think Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah and Jacob Phillips really intriguing. Anthony Walker's pretty good. I think they minimize the linebacker position with this defense. You got the strong back end, you want the strong front 4, and the guys in the middle, let them run around and make some plays.
Yeah, and that's really all you need them to do at this point. You have good enough defensive backs to really hold that down. You're telling me that you have Jadeveon Clowney and Myles Garrett going after the quarterback. So at that point, that opens up a lot more for the middle of your defense. And, again, we talked about a unit last year that was hurting so badly for a linebacker. Obviously, trading up for Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah showed that it paid off dividends in 2021. Looking into 2022, again, this is a defense where these guys, they don't necessarily have to play a ton. You don't have a ton of linebackers on the field, but what you do have is those guys being able to be put into spots where they can just read and react. They don't have to worry about too much in coverage. Again, you have the guys that are athletically able to, but they still are able to read, react, and do what they do best.
All right, so this is from ESPN.com. A surprise offseason standout for each and every one of the 32 teams. And for the Browns, they go with Grant Delpit. Former second-round pick battled injuries, including an Achilles tear his rookie season, now projected as a starter. Delpit, John Johnson III, could provide a major strength for the Browns this season. And Grant Delpit, Mack, was a guy that, as it got later in the year, I think he was another guy that, Joe Woods was like, all right, now we can do this with him. Now we can do this. You saw him evolve in this defense and the way Joe Woods would use him as the season went along.
Yeah, and you saw in that back half the reason why, that safety room looked so depleted after he went down. He was relied upon in his rookie season, obviously went down with his Achilles tear. Now, you don't necessarily have those high expectations on him because of the fact that, again, coming off that injury, they add in John Johnson. So he has a veteran next to him as well to help him kind of pick up that learning curve as well. So you mix together, Grant Delpit, who, again, athletic as hell, he can go ahead and be next to somebody like John Johnson, And then you also have Ronnie Harrison, who you brought back to put closer to the line of scrimmage. So what does that do? That frees up Grant Delpit to play freely. And that's the one thing that, when he was at LSU, as long as he could read and react and play well in coverage, that I think was the strength of Grant Delpit. And why I think that now you have John Johnson, you have Grant Delpit, you have those two that can both play near the line of scrimmage in the box, or you can have them play a little bit further back in that free safety type of a role. I think that you can interchange both of those guys and really mix and mess with the opponent's heads when you're looking at what different fronts you're looking at as a defense if you're Joe Woods. So I think that Grant Delpit can really take that next step in year 3, now full season of year 2 in the NFL. So for him taking that next step next to John Johnson, I think that can unlock a lot of different things in the Browns defense in 2022.
Yeah, the other thing, as the year went along, he was the guy that was really effective blitzing too, and I think you're going to probably see that a little bit more from Grant Delpit.
Yeah, and that's where the creativity of Joe Woods comes into play because, again, you have Greg Newsome on the in the slot now at this point this year, Greedy Williams on the outside, Denzel Ward as well. So you have the coverage guys that keep that in play. So at that point, you can rotate your safeties. If you want to use somebody like Ronnie Harrison close to the line of scrimmage, you can do that. Or if you want to drop him back and blitz somebody like Delpit, like you mentioned, it adds a lot of creativity for Joe Woods and allows him to go ahead and take that next step with the defense and truly utilize these guys' assets and these guys' skills best on the field.
Mack Robinson from 92.3 The Fan and I are going to step aside, take one more time out, other side of the break. We head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Who needs to step up with a Deshaun Watson suspension looming? Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Mack Robinson from 92.3 The Fan. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one, who needs to step up if there is a significant Deshaun Watson suspension?
Hey, Dave, got a question about who needs to step up. There's been some chatter in the other Cleveland media about what unit on the Browns needs to step up if Deshaun Watson gets an extensive suspension. I want to get your thoughts on my opinion that it's the special teams that need to step up the most. If the Browns punters and kickers can give the opposition longer fields and the return game can give the offense a Jacoby Brissett-led offense shorter fields, and our rookie place kicker can really deliver on clutch field goals, the Browns might really be able to just stack up some of those big special teams plays and win a lot of lower scoring games if Jacoby Brissett-led offense isn't putting up big numbers on offense. So love to hear y'all's opinion on that in terms of the Cleveland Browns special teams stepping up this season in the face of a long Deshaun Watson suspension in order to keep the Browns in the playoff conversation. Appreciate you all. Go Browns.
As always, we appreciate all of the voicemails. And Mac, it's a valid point. Hidden yardage, special teams needs to be better, even if Deshaun Watson's playing all 17 games. But to the caller's point, yeah, you want to give longer fields for your defense to defend, shorter fields for your offense to travel and make the field goals.
Yeah, and I would say this, Dave, when it comes to what aspect of the team needs to step up the most, I would say the defense would have to carry the largest load. But I would say this, he raises a good point when it comes to special teams, because the special teams can be that X factor for you to win or lose each week. Again, look at multiple times this past year, one being against the Vegas Raiders, among other games throughout this season where, it really came down to a few of those missed field goals or a few of those missed extra points along the way that really ended up changing some of those wins into losses for the Cleveland Browns this past year. So, again, taking a look at that, you really can see the difference in changing the field when it comes to the punting unit. And look at week 1 against Kansas City last year. If Jamie Gillen doesn't, fumble away that punt or muff that punt, then maybe we're talking about a different story in week 1 to start off the season. So, again, looking at all of these, the special teams, it might not necessarily be the one that has to step up the most. I would say that's the defense, but the special teams will be the X factor, I think, towards the Browns being a good team to the Browns being even better going into 2022, going into this season.
And they certainly have put the resources into it with Grant, Cade York, and the new punter as well. All right, this is kind of interesting. So Dog Pound Daily. Browns quarterback options if Deshaun Watson is suspended all season. We got 3 of them here. They say Nick Foles, number 3. Number 2, Jimmy Garoppolo. And number 1, Sam Darnold. I don't like number one even a little. I get it would be as a backup. Nick Foles, maybe. You know me. I'm thumping the tub for Teddy Bridgewater at this point.
I know, Dave. You're going to be riding that train all the way through 2022 into 2023. Dave, I look at any of these names, and the Colts brought in Nick Foles after bringing in Matt Ryan. They couldn't afford to deal with the Eagles quarterback for the majority of 2017. So they decided to bring in the playoff quarterback from that year. I think I'm okay on that. If Jacksonville and Chicago didn't even want him, then I don't necessarily know if I want Nick Foles. Jimmy Garoppolo, look, you know me. I don't like Instagram stunt food, so I don't want it. Jimmy Garoppolo at this point. And, with Sam Darnold, I mean, I don't know. Maybe if he gets brought in to, sit behind Jacoby Brissett for the majority of the year, then maybe. But the problem is, Dave, is that when it comes to the Cleveland Browns at the quarterback position, they try to structure it so that they have quarterbacks of similar styles, at least at the quarterback position, whether it be play action, movement around the pocket, and being able to operate a similar type of system. I just don't see Nick Foles, who is essentially a statue. He might as well be standing out there for Otto Graham at this point. And then, you have Jimmy Garoppolo, who, again, I wonder how much of a ceiling you actually have with that team. I honestly would rather roll with Jacoby Brissett at that point. And then Sam Darnold, again, I think he's more of a guy that you take a shot on as a developmental type player to see where he ends up by the end of the year. But I don't see him making much sense, especially at his price tag as well. So any of these options, honestly, I'm just rolling Jacoby Brissett. And look, if Teddy Bridgewater becomes available, Dave, I will listen to it. I will go ahead, and if they trade for him, I will give it the Dave Bacon stamp of approval at that point. But, until then, I think I'm going to be fine with Jacoby Brissett, and I guess I'll roll with the rocket scientist Josh Dobbs as my third stringer.
Yeah, to your point, Sam Darnold has the same price tag as Baker Mayfield because they picked up the fifth-year option of him. Garoppolo even more expensive. So, I hear you. Again, Mack Robinson, 92.3 The Fan. I know you got an air shift coming, 7 to midnight. You can talk to Mack on 92.3 The Fan. Appreciate you hopping on and joining us today, giving us time and insight as always. Thanks very much, Mack.
Of course, Dave. Always love hopping on with you guys.
All right, Mack Robinson, again, you can listen to him tonight from 7 to midnight, 92.3 The Fan. Call in, talk to Mack. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, thrilled to be joined by Terry Pluto, a columnist from The Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. We'll talk some Deshaun Watson, some Browns quarterback, and some Guardians. Terry Pluto, straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. Welcome back to Sports4CLE. We continue talking Browns. Let's welcome in Terry Pluto, columnist for The Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. So, Terry, your thoughts on Deshaun Watson. Do you think the Browns knew the depth of what they were getting into when they traded for him?
Well, I heard about all the great vetting and everything else they did. Remember, they kept telling us 5 months and all this stuff. And I know they weren't happy with me because I wrote 2 columns before. The first column I wrote, don't go in deep on Deshaun Watson. Then recall the word from Watson's camp came out, the Browns were out. And then I wrote a column saying the Browns will be very happy they didn't get involved in this. Then the next day, the Browns were back in and they got him. And then I wrote a column saying it was just, I remember I said I couldn't decide whether to be speechless or outraged when I saw the contract, and that this was their decision. But I think their feeling was they were assured that there would be no criminal charges. And I thought that's all they really cared about. And they'd ride out the rest.
Okay. So when you put it in those terms, the hearing is underway. It could go into tomorrow, potentially even. How long do you think he gets suspended for, being Deshaun Watson? He's going to get a suspension. The league's going indefinite with a minimum of a year. You can reapply for instatement in a year. And we've heard that the NFLPA's attorney, Jeffrey Kessler, who has a lot of experience of this, is going to strategically say he shouldn't be suspended. Where do you think this ends up?
Well, the Browns, in their research, try to figure out who actually get a year suspension, who's gotten that. And people for gambling got them, and generally people with some sort of felony criminal charge. So they thought, our guy's not gambling, and our guy has not been charged with any felonies, so he probably won't get a year. And I think that's why they, like you said, why they decided to go forward with it. But I've been getting people that, like, he should get 4 games or 6 games. And, you know, we're in a whole new era of time right now and how people view things. And, I mean, remember, Tom Brady got 4 games for deflating footballs. Myles Garrett got 6 games for, he got kicked in the unmentionable, shall we say, and then whacked Mason Rudolph with a helmet and an on-field brawl. Kareem Hunt got 8 games, but that also didn't count. Remember, the Chiefs cut him, and he lost his salary. And then the Browns picked him up on what amounted to a minimum, almost make-good contract. So those were different penalties, different times. And then, you know, they're going to bring in all the owners. But I just wanted to set the context and how the Browns were looking at it. But I think they didn't understand that this is a strange case. And that's not to diminish all the charges of women, but I've never recalled in any sports where you have so many women about so many things and all these text messages and all this other garbage, unsavory stuff. So the fact they asked for a year doesn't surprise me. I thought perhaps once they settled 20 of the 24 cases that they might be okay with not having this indefinite thing hanging over them. And that might be, like you said, that Watson will say we shouldn't be suspended at all. They're going to say a year minimum, plus we'll look at it again. Maybe you end up with just the final suspension is for a year, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm guessing it lands somewhere in the 10 to 12 game range. And again, nobody knows for certain. All right, assuming
but David,
go ahead.
David, I mean, you got to think about this for a moment. Houston didn't know what to do with him last year. They really didn't. Why did they have him stay home and paid to stay home? And then why did the Browns, I'm not beating up on Watson. He's got his own problems. But the Browns are the ones who brought the fan base and everybody else into it. They were the ones that decided to go all in with draft picks and record-breaking contracts and everything else for a guy that sat out all last year because Houston couldn't figure out what to do with him. They had a hard time getting him traded. It was just, to me, a completely act of desperation. Let's all go all in and hope for the best, and we'll ride out any criticism that we get. That's their feeling, but here you are. And if they didn't anticipate that the media would be all over this case, you know, investigating everybody, and if they didn't realize the attorney they were facing and Busby, and they had to have done that because Busby and Harden are 2 of the biggest guns down in Texas, and they go at each other publicly all the time. They were just really naive.
Assuming it is, you know, a significant suspension, which it likely will be, do you think the Browns need to go out and get another quarterback? This roster's pretty good.
Absolutely. Now, whether you want to start Brissett or not, you can't have Josh Dobbs as your backup quarterback. He's thrown 17 passes in the NFL. 17. And most quarterbacks do not play all 16 games. So you need somebody else. And I would talk to San Francisco about Garoppolo. I want to check on how he is physically. They said he's throwing. Remember, he had surgery on his right throwing arm, his passing arm. Baker had his left. I'm not thrilled about him, but I'd rather have Sam Darnold as my backup than Joshua Dobbs. I'd look around at some others, but they absolutely must get an established quarterback that you could play a significant amount of games, because at the minimum, as you said, Watson's going to be suspended, I think, a significant amount. And that's why I use the word significant. Therefore, you had better have, I think, 2 guys ready to go.
When you look at it, if it's Jacoby Brissett or, Jimmy Garoppolo is a little different. Can this team still make the playoffs if they don't have Deshaun Watson? The roster's good. Is it good enough?
Yes, it is good. It really is. And that's the sad thing about what the Browns did here is, I guess in their mind, they're playing the long game with Watson. They'll get him eventually, win a lot of games with him eventually. But this team's ready to roll right now. And you're kind of losing a year with this whole group. And I just think that, I wrote a thing about a week ago. What can they do with Brissett? Can they win 9 or 10 games? I don't think that's out of the question. If he doesn't throw the ball to the other team. And by the way, one of the big things they did, and hopefully it works out, is they really try to improve their special teams. I think they lost 2 games on special teams last year with the failed kicking and just some of the games of punting was pretty poor also. So with Cade York, hopefully that'll certainly he's got a strong enough leg, and we'll see if he can be accurate when it counts. It's a good team. That's also the thing that's annoying about this. This is a good team, and lost in the never-ending drumbeat of Watson is the fact it's a really good team with a lot of talent on it.
Terry Pluto and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit about that Browns defense. Could be improving with a number of young guys. We'll also switch our focus a little bit, talk a little Guardians baseball. Sports4CLE will be right back with Terry Pluto. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
We continue talking Browns. We'll talk a little Guardians with Terry Pluto, columnist for The Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. Terry, Browns defense a year ago had so many new pieces. A lot of those pieces are back. Some young guys in their second year, JOK, Greg Newsome. How good do you think this defense can be for the Browns?
They're different type of ratings last year, but it was close to a top 10 defense last year by the end of the year. And I think that's what it'll be this year. I'm not sure it's going to be elite, but it's certainly going to be good enough playoff caliber. And because you have Clowney coming back with Garrett, and of course with Clowney, you always are concerned that he stays healthy. He did last year, but that's not always been the case in the past. But he's a talent. They have to block him. The secondary is very strong. And Joe Woods now has year 2 of John Johnson and Greg Newsome. You have Denzel Ward, they got him signed up. Greedy Williams has become a much better player than I thought he would be. I really do I just like the team. JOK, you mentioned. They're very excited about Jacob Phillips. They think if he finally stays healthy at linebacker, he could do something. And Grant Delpit at safety, the 2 guys they drafted from LSU. They think they're playmakers, and that we'll really see the kind of players they are this year. So most teams would love to have the Browns defense. And flip side, by the way, David, I was thinking we were talking about Brissett and can they win without it. With that defense and the Browns running game, And not only do you have Kareem Hunt, you have Chubb, but D'Ernest Johnson's a really good player too. They're very high on Jerome Ford. They think Ford can help them catching some passes out of the backfield. So they have a lot of depth in the backfield. Because remember, last year you thought you had all the depth, but there was 2 games where D'Ernest Johnson had to start because there's both running backs got hurt. Receiving, it can be better, but I think David Bell is going to really help them. He is a possession receiver. He's coming sometimes this guy has good hands, and you see in these drills against the air, and they're dropping balls, but not this guy. And I really have thought Donovan Peoples-Jones has a chance to be a good player. Maybe that happens this year. And Amari Cooper, he's in his prime. The late 20s. He's a good route runner. I like the team. That's why I said 9 or 10 games even without Deshaun.
All right, before we switch our focus to the Guardians, and I know you kind of delineated your thoughts with the Watson signing. What about the job this front office has done managing the salary cap? Eventually it's got to come. That check has to come due. But they have cap room. They keep their young guys. They finally have young guys that you want to give a second contract to and extend.
Well, the cap next year, the last time I looked, they were $8 million over. So that's the 23 cap. So they're going to have to deal with that. I mean, these bills do come up. And to be fair to them, the $1,350,000, whatever that figure is, that Deshaun Watson in the first year, they have given that same type of contract to, they gave it to Garrett the year before. I also checked. It was also given to Patrick Mahomes and was given to Aaron Rodgers. I don't know why. There must be some mathematical salary cap reason they do that their first year. But then you're at $56 million on the cap the rest of the time for like Watson and these other guys. But they've done it. They've done a good job, and they think that they'll be able to continue to manage it. I like Andrew Berry. And by the way, the Watson decision, I'm not sure this is completely true, but let's say it is. Let's say the football people were 100% all on board with Watson. This is an ownership decision because you're not talking just about football. This is something that reflects on your entire franchise. And your franchise, frankly, is going to be dragged through the mud for quite a while. And your fan base is going to be split. So it isn't just, I want this guy. I've always thought, for example, John Dorsey would be a good GM with a strong owner who would say, no, John, Antonio Callaway is not our guy. Find me another receiver. Too much risk with this guy. That kind of thing. Just because a football guy wants it doesn't mean as an owner you give it to him. I mean, the best owners aren't the ones telling you who to get, but sometimes they protect you from yourself. John Hart told me a story, and I'm trying to remember the pitcher they were all set to make this big trade for. I think it was somebody like Brett Saberhagen. It was a guy from the Royals. And they were going to trade some top prospects. And they're in the room was Hargrove and Dan O'Dowd, who's assistant, and Mike and John Hart. And they're sitting there with Dick Jacobs, and they're back and forth. And Jacobs is just kind of looking through the media guy of the Royals. And he goes, John, this guy's like, the last 3 or 4 years, he's been on the disabled list, and he hardly pitches 100 innings. Do we really want to do this? That's what a good owner does. He didn't say, I need you to trade for these other 2 guys. But he just says, well, look, he's hurt. Do we really want to do this? Make me understand. And Hart said, it dawned on him, they were overthinking it. Yeah, no, we don't want to really do this. Why do we want to bring on another guy and give up whoever, I forgot who the prospects were, but I remember him telling me that because we got on the subject of what does a good owner do? Because Jacobs was a very good owner. Paul Dolan is a very good owner. He doesn't. That's why these guys want to stay there. Jimmy Haslam. That's why I said in the end, Jimmy Haslam, wherever the football people were, Haslam green lighted this thing, and I'm keeping it on his name.
All right, let's switch our attention to the Guardians now. You surprised by the success? Young team, some unproven guys. Are you surprised, as we approach 4th of July, they're in the thick of the American League Central?
Yes, and they're having all these games with the Twins as we're speaking that could help determine that. I think I picked him for, I forgot whether it was like 77 and 85, something like that. Under 500. And that what I assumed was going to happen with the strong second half. And because Tito's teams generally play well in the second half, and young players, by then you tend to have a better year, second half of the year with them, because you sorted through the ones that can play and can't play. So I'm excited about this. And 2023 with these guys, they're going to be good. They really are. And I mean, when you go around the diamond, I think Andres Jimenez is going to be a star. Jose is a star. Owen Miller is very solid. The catching, they can catch, they can't hit, but Bo Naylor's coming. I mean, he's going to be coming sooner rather than later. And, you know, I'll tell you what's hurt him this year. Reyes has been, I don't know what's with him. He just looked lost. And, you know, in the outfield, suddenly they might have an outfield. You know, Stephen Kwan is a legit leadoff hitter. Miles Straw's a career 260 hitter. I don't think he's going to hit 205 all year. If he does, I think he'll bounce back and hit better next year. And when they look, whether it's the eye test, if you've never saw Rick Manning play the outfield, Miles Straw, that's how Rick played it back in the day. And then in the other, you know, spot, we'll see how Oscar Gonzalez does, but so far so good with him. This is the first time I was sitting there looking at the outfield going, you know, that looks pretty good.
Yeah.
And Josh Naylor, whether he plays first base or DH, I mean, ideally he'd be a DH. You know, he's got a nice short. I'm not saying it'll be great, but if you're get past the Dolans are cheap, and just watch the games with an open mind, you will see that they have a lot of good young talent, position player talent.
Yeah, the only thing is they don't have the guys in the middle of the lineup, but to their credit, they're not trying to play that way. So the things that get magnified, you know, you got to hit the ball behind the runner. You can't rely on the home run. You got to make the plays defensively. But I think that's kind of the plan that they had.
Yes, because it's hard to get, you know, I left Jose out intentionally because, you know, he's the heartbeat of it. Jose signing the extension, that cannot be magnified enough. Because just think, if they'd have traded him before opening day, and that very well could have happened. But Jose signed the extension, and I really think that gave Jose the confidence to fully embrace the leadership role that is now his. And that's important. Remember, baseball is a heavy Latino sport. A lot of the younger players, especially Latino guys, grew up idolizing Jose. Now they're around him. And he's just, you know, having a fabulous year. They got to make sure they rest him once in a while because this guy will not stop. And when your best player runs that hard, plays that hard, cares so much, and wants to stay here, I mean, this is not a guy from Akron, you know, like LeBron deciding to come home. He's from the Dominican Republic, and he wants to stay in Cleveland where it's cold. And, you know, part of the reason is the same reason Terry Francona wants to stay here, and Mike Chernoff and Chris Antonetti want to stay here. Francona calls it pure baseball. They just feel like there's just a lot fewer distractions, very little drama, play the game.
Let me ask you this. So they got a new minority owner, David Blitzer. That's big. He's eventually likely to become the majority owner. What do you think they need to do? What do they need to add? And I have a name in mind. Let me throw it out at you. Whit Merrifield, 33-year-old guy, plays second base, can play the outfield for the Royals. The Royals just traded Carlos Santana. They're likely to trade some more guys as it comes up. I think he'd be the perfect guy. He plays the style of ball they want to. He would be a guy that could protect Jose Ramirez more so than anybody there because that's a guy that just always hits and always hits the way that they play the game.
Yeah, he doesn't have the power, but I love Merrifield, and because he could play the outfield, and that's probably where I would play him. Be interesting to see what the price tag would be. You know, the Merrifield to the Royals is like Jose to the Guardians. I mean, he is the heart and soul of that team. I don't know if John Sherman wanted to trade him or not, but I want to stress this with Blitzer coming in and taking in approximately a little less than 25% is what I was told. This is going to be a longer process for him taking over. It's not going to be, you're not going to see big changes now. What they really wanted to do is take the 15% of the franchise that was in escrow that belonged to John Sherman, get that off the books, and then add another 10% in terms of money coming in. But it's not going to be a big game changer in terms of payroll or anything in the next several years. But it does bring some stability, I think, to the ownership situation.
Terry Pluto, as always, thanks so much for the time and the insight, Terry. Appreciate it very much.
I'm glad to do it, David.
All right, Terry Pluto, make sure you read him. Pages of the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com, one of the outstanding columnists, the outstanding columnist in the city of Cleveland. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow on Sports for CLE.